Hi everyone, welcome to Casual Watch Talk Sunday Social. This should be a fun one this week. So we are going to talk about all of our deal breakers when it comes to watch collecting, when it comes to which watches we pick up, and also like I've got a few that are just general icks, I think the kids call them in the watch world. But anyway, let's kick it off with a wristwatch check. Colby, do you want to kick us off? You're in the hot seat.
Yeah, I have my Tudor Black Bay 41, one of the newer master chronometer versions. So it's kind of become my Sunday watch because I have a mild superstition about supporting my football team, the Kansas City Chiefs, who are not playing today, but it's kind of become a habit. So the red bezel is what does it.
You and Watches with Dennis, I think that's his team as well.
That's right, yeah.
Neither of you actually in Kansas, but
it's true.
Dave, what are you wearing?
I'm wearing. Oh, just fell over, didn't it? Typically, I'm wearing my prototype maker rig.
Look at that.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. That's the first time. Is that the first time it's been on YouTube? I only saw the drawings.
Pretty much. This is the first ever prototype. So.
Wow, this is an exclusive.
Relatively, yes, pretty much. So this is a very early prototype. It's not finished. You can see the numbers are even handwritten.
Yeah.
Even
redialed.
Like that. So
you should actually keep that as a feature.
That's a cartoon dial. But yes, this is just an engineering prototype. So it's the first
second version.
Yeah, this is the kids Crayola version.
Still a cool version though.
Yeah,
it's still pretty
cool. Really cool.
But as I say, it's an early engineering one, so there's a few things like you can still see the spring loaders for the hands in there and stuff. But yeah, it's just to make sure certain things work and fit. But yeah, it's up and it's alive.
That is really, really cool. Wow.
There we go.
Todd, top that.
Oh, well, I can't quite, but I'll do something that's also unique. Been wearing this actually a lot lately, considering how unwieldy it is. This is a Hoyer 1974 nice. Caliber 14.
Cool.
There we go. Caliber 14. This is their calculator. So it's a circular slide rule. And with a date, Sam. And if Orange Hands is here, these are Orange Hands.
Yeah.
Not quite Kansas City colors. They're more like Denver. But
the Broncos, yeah. It reminds me of the Breitling that they modified for Thunderball, the James Bond film, for some reason.
Oh, I have to look at that one
again. Mark, what are you wearing?
So I have my focus a little bugger. Mido Ocean Star GMT, which has a nice blue dial for the Williams Formula One team. I'm sure it's unintentional since Williams don't have a watch sponsor. And since Todd isn't doing two watches today, unusually, I will put up my Christopher Ward C9 moon phase because I'm keeping it running so that I can see the full moon tomorrow.
Okay.
Oh,
this is a nice moon phase.
Nice.
Cool. I will round it out with not worn it for ages, but the Christopher Ward Elite 1000. It's chunky, but it's so good. Made it titanium. I think this is probably the best diver they ever made up till now. Okay, so this week should be an interesting. This should be an interesting subject. So what I've done is we've had a little bit of a pull. We've put some of our deal breakers together, but definitely, guys, as always, keep active in the comments with your deal breakers as well. But should we kick it off with? Well, should we start with the one that three of you picked, but I don't agree with, and that is the Cyclops on a watch. That is a deal breaker. Who wants to take that one?
Well, I'll be Pete McConville's stunt double on this one because it should be four of us who picked this. Cyclops on watches, made famous by a certain brand, I think legend has it because his wife couldn't read the date, so he put a little magnifier on it so she could read the date, and the damn thing has stayed there ever since. What a wart on a dial.
Absolutely.
There is no way to make them look attractive. And yes, they do perform a function, but if you can't read the date, don't be Sam, buy a watch without a date. You will have a more symmetrical, neater looking dial. It will look classier. You don't have to have the argument that 4:30 is the only correct place to put a date. If you need a cyclops, go dateless. It's horrible. It's unnecessary. At least I believe you can take them off with judicious application of heat. But yeah, awful things.
Well, on the basis that, well, you would think nowadays with the technology they've got, you could grow an area in the actual, or you could design the sapphire that's built in now, because you can definitely do it
Like
with
Tag do.
reading glasses now. Well, yeah, exactly. So rather than have this ugly thing, well, ugly is a
It's true.
Ugly,
It's a good word.
They're pretty ugly. Yeah, it's pretty. I was thinking of a nicer word, but no, it's true. You could almost have it built in, like you would get in a varifocal lens, which actually would be quite cool. Mind you, that would be probably ludicrously expensive compared to gluing another bit in the top of it.
Maybe you could insert a high refractive index portion into the dial. Again, Tag managed it. There are pros and cons to that approach. On the Tag Heuer, you have to be pretty much 90 degrees on, exactly perpendicular to it to read it properly, but it works, and it's much less elegant. It's much more elegant. And, it's much more innovative than slapping a magnifying glass on the watch glass
or
and
just
getting it done.
just do what those pesky Germans do. There's a thing called a big date.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just do a big date properly, and there you go.
Well, I'll defend the Cyclops a bit. I don't mind it at all. I like it, but it
Well, you
is as a
can roll
watch
it, so-
reviewer. Yeah, as a watch reviewer, it's one of the things that's really hard to do in macro. The Cyclops, because there's always a little bit of dirt around the edge, no matter how well you clean it. The same with the crown. For some reason, Todd and I were talking about this on the podcast. We've spun the podcast back up again. The second best watch podcast. The crown is also
well saved.
Yeah, if you like Scottish watches but with 50% less professionalism, you'll enjoy ours.
And a whole lot less Scottishness.
And a whole lot less Scottishness, yeah.
It's also probably a lot cleaner as well.
Yeah.
We can change that, Sam, for you.
Oh yeah, definitely. And the crown also is really hard to film because you get all your. Though I have to film a crown straight out the box when I get the watch out of the box because otherwise you can't get it out. But I don't mind the Cyclops. Anybody else? Is anybody else strongly? Colby, what are you going to help me out here? The Cyclops?
No, I'm. Totally not even a little. Yeah.
To be honest, it's not my favourite thing. Would it put me off buying a watch if everything else about the watch lined up and I liked it? No. But at the same time, do I would prefer a dial without a Cyclops? Yes.
I mean,
so I'll stick on the fence.
There was one Rolex that I was going to, I thought about buying, and it was the previous generation Sea Dweller when they didn't have the technology to stick the Cyclops on it because of the depth rating. And then they moved a generation and suddenly they could put the Cyclops in it. And it's just like, nope, don't want it anymore.
I'm with Mark. It's a wart, it's a pimple, it's unsightly, it's terrible, it gets in the way. I don't mind it as much the way that Tag does it on the underside. Although I didn't know that they formed it into the crystal. I thought it had been glued on to the bottom instead of the top. But
that was just a guess, Colby. So yes, you have quoted me on that, and I will regret that for the rest of eternity. Clearly,
along with metal straps. Okay. Next up, so Cyclops is definitely one. I've got one here, and I'm sure this is going to cause a controversy, but I don't like people calling watches timepieces. Because I'll tell you why. Because it makes me think of the codpiece. For some reason.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, it's pretentious. Watch collecting is pretentious enough as it is, but when you're like, "Oh, what timepiece are you wearing, sir?" it just doesn't. I just don't. It just. I've never liked it. Like, oh, what timepieces have you got in your collection? It's a watch, wristwatch, watch. I will go with.
Well, I think it depends how you use it, doesn't it? Because you could have someone who also collects wristwatches and also collects pocket watches. Therefore, they are timepieces.
It reminds me of codpiece.
It does have a place. It is a broader term than watch. But I want to know, Sam, how is that a deal breaker for you? If a salesman says that word, will you not buy the watch?
It's when somebody asks me what timepiece do I recommend, I immediately I'm turned off by it. I'm just like,
And how would you manage timepiece unique? As in piece unique?
Yeah, piece unique. That's piece
no,
unique,
but it could also be timepiece unique. I mean, no one's going to say it. Well,
exactly.
Unless I've started a trend. Please let me know.
Come on, back
in
the
the comments below.
Does anybody else get the ick from timepiece? Yeah, timepiece gentleman, prime example.
I mean, yeah, but then someone also says that it reminds them of Blackadder, and anything that reminds you of Blackadder is a good thing in anyone's.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I got it. The timepiece. I actually found when I was researching codpiece, I found out that Rowan Atkinson actually sold his codpiece from Blackadder for £850. That would have been a better investment than most watches. I think it's probably worth a fortune now. But it just reminds me of that sort of, where gentlemen showed off with their codpieces, and I was like, oh, I'm going to show off with my timepiece. It's like a modern day codpiece. The word. Okay, right, moving swiftly on because nobody agreed with me there. Again, let's find another one
yes,
I won't
Todd.
agree with.
I agree.
Yes, good. I'm glad you guys got that message.
What was that?
If I may quote.
Oh yeah. Oh, you can do when I didn't spell it properly.
You didn't spell
That's part of the fun of the.
I actually bit my lip. I just said I'm just going to let it lie.
Exactly. You were the better man.
No, I was going to serve it up to you after the show. That thing about revenge and best served cold and all that,
Yeah. Well, yeah. You can kick me right in the codpiece afterwards. Okay, screw down pushers. This was a Pete McConville one. Pete couldn't be with us, but he sent his icks to us. Screw down pushers. He means on a chronograph.
I mean, I can kind of get that one, to be honest. It's a pointless endeavor.
Yeah, I get it. I guess part of it depends. I mean, I guess the idea is if you really want it to be useful, you shouldn't have them screwed down. But then again, how often do you have to time something where you don't have time to unscrew the pushers? I think I'm pretty medium on this one.
But it tends to be fitted to watches that are chronographs that are trying to play at being a dive watch as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was thinking like the Seamaster chronograph.
To me, it's kind of like if you're going to go to the bother of doing a dive watch as a chronograph, find a way of doing it that you can use the chronograph when you're underwater, as opposed to just making them screw down. That kind of would it put me off buying a watch? Probably, actually, because I just find I just wouldn't buy a chronograph that's also pretending to be a dive watch.
Yeah, there's a lot of faux screw downs, isn't there, as well? I just reviewed a Citizen that had a faux screw down pushers, which is even weirder, I think.
I mean, I've got 2 Seamaster chronographs that don't have screw down pushers.
Okay.
Not that I'm ever taking them diving, to be fair, but you don't necessarily need them. And I bet you I would forget they were screw down pushers, and it would irritate me every time. I had to remember that I want to time something. Damn it, I've got to fiddle with the screw downs. And so that would just drive me crazy.
No, good one. This next one, Mark, you've planted this, I think, because it's coming through thick and fast here. But of course, your famous one, which is Roman numerals.
Roman numerals, yes. I mean, I have just spent Christmas reading a book on medieval science, which finally did teach me how to do long division in Roman numerals. Oh, it's horrible. Don't. Why? It's just a fake. It's a pretentious way of adding a veneer of sophistication to a watch. They are frequently ugly. they frequently dominate the dial. My moon phase actually has Roman numerals on it, but they are small, discrete. They aren't over the full dial. Please, 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 never do a Cartier and just make it. You might as well not have a mechanism. You just put the Roman numerals in and a piece for the
sundial.
Sundial. Thank you. Stop it. And it comes with that veneer of expensive, sophisticated luxury, and it's quite frankly bollocks.
Yeah,
So
put a sun
take
piece
them
on
away.
there.
Horrible things.
I think there's a few watches that can pull them off.
There are some watches that can carry it off, but
Yeah.
as a proportion of the watches that use them, it's vanishingly small.
I think you're right in that there's a lot of brands at a certain price point, shall we say, that try to emulate something that's considerably more expensive and do it using Roman numerals to give this pretense of being more than it is, when in actual fact it could just be done quite cleanly. I think it's really difficult to do a dial well with Roman numerals because battens at least are symmetrical. Standardized Gregorian numbers are not too bad to play with, but I think Roman numerals can get quite messy quite quickly.
I mean, they can be done well, but they frequently aren't. But most of the time, they're not.
Yeah,
I personally don't mind Roman numerals. I don't have any watches currently with Roman numerals. However, I do associate Roman numerals on watches with learning something, which I always like, and that is there's the watchmakers 4, which is I.
Mm-hmm.
And some superficial research that I did about 2 years ago showed me that actually there didn't seem to be any agreement about how you actually do the 4 in Roman numerals. That if you go back and look in the Middle Ages, you actually see it both ways. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. I would actually probably like the Santos a little bit more if it didn't have Romans on. And I don't mean it doesn't even have to have like normal numbers on it. It just could have the batons there. I think I would actually like the Santos a lot more because I do like the K shape of it.
The thing is with the Santos, and that's not only do you not have a circular dial, although the hands clearly move in a circle, you've got to change the proportions every time. And no.
So we need to change Big Ben then, right? That's not, we should advocate.
That's not exactly a watch I can go out and buy, is it?
Oh, now
I mean, to be fair, you're asking a Scotsman here. I'd go back to Guy Fawkes and we would deal with it quite efficiently these days.
Yeah, before anybody comments, yes, we know Big Ben is the bell and not the clock tower.
Westminster clock, I think is
St. Stephen's clock.
Yeah,
it is the bell of the chapel. It is the
Westminster Tower. It's Westminster Tower.
Yeah,
Big Ben is the bell.
Yeah, and it's St. Stephen's Chapel underneath it.
Yeah. Okay, let's see if we can get a consensus on at least one. This is one of yours, Colby. No hacking.
Yeah, you would think that no watches no longer do not have hacking. However, I have bought multiple watches over the last few years that did not have hacking, and the dealer did not disclose that it did not have hacking, probably because he knew that if he did, a lot of people would be less likely to buy it. So it wasn't exactly dishonest, but I wish he'd said, hey, this doesn't have hacking, does it?
Well, there's some famous, isn't there? Like the Studio Underdogs, that Seagull movement doesn't hack, does it? Yeah.
Well,
the watch that I bought was a Nomos Ahoy, and it was, I think, 1 or 2 generations old, and it did not have hacking.
If it's based on a lot of older movements, a lot of them didn't have hacking on them.
Yeah, Omega Speedmaster didn't have it until they went coaxial.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was not uncommon up until 20, 25 years ago that probably at least half the watches out there didn't have hacking on them. Hacking was seen as a very much a kind of aviator or a military thing that most average people didn't really need it.
Even some newer watches, like I found out the hard way. I have a Panerai 1314. It's the 44 millimeter Luminor, and I found out that the Panerai 9010 movement, which is their latest movement, it does not have hacking, even though the previous generation movement did have hacking. The 9000 movement did have hacking, and then they removed it from the 9010. So I had no idea before I bought that watch.
because it's like one of those games, isn't it, where you got to try and catch it right on the thing. I'm going to offer myself up for public ridicule again, but wasn't there watches back in the day where like a little pin would come out and stop
Yes.
the second hand going?
Yep.
Oh,
Yes.
thanks, Todd.
Pocket watches. There were some. I think there were some wristwatches too, Dave. Right? I think there were some.
Yeah,
right, early on.
Absolutely. But as I
So
say,
instead of
it was
hacking, it
it was
stopped.
really only the military application of it that needed that degree of precision. You know, remember standards like Kosk and all of these things as well. The accuracy that we look for these days in mechanical watches was never a huge thing back then, as long as it was broadly accurate, and you would adjust your watch typically most days.
Right.
Yeah. So Atelier when apparently perception movement doesn't hack. Zenith El Primero doesn't have hacking. Is that right?
There's a lot. There's still a lot of watches out there that don't have it.
Is it that much more difficult to engineer, though, Dave?
It's not about it. These days, no, it's not difficult. It's not about that, though. It's about the fact that so many watch brands still utilize movements that are based on legacy systems, and they just don't, most brands don't have any engineering prowess when it comes to movements. They buy a movement, they put it in a watch, and off they go to the races, and that's what they do. So they're not going to sit and fundamentally re-engineer a movement to put hacker into it. They just wouldn't do it.
I guess we're lucky then that the ETA 2824 was hacking, because that's, even in its Solita form, that's what it's based on. So
yeah,
a lot of watches have those movements. I figure we're lucky that we actually have as many hacking watches that we do.
Yeah. Good point. Okay, let's move on to the next one then. I will pick in fact, Mark, did you which was yours? Which was yours was Roman numerals?
You've covered Roman numerals. You've covered screw down pushers. We've had the cyclops. I'll pass it on to somebody else because my next one would be overly large Arabic numerals on watch dials.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Well, I'll quickly dive in with this. Is one that I don't like. It's particularly to do with Seiko, and that is divers extensions, where not ratcheted clasps. Like ratcheted clasps are like a must for me, and I know Colby, you had that on. Like a bracelet now for me, if I'm going to buy it, it has to have a ratcheted clasp on. But what I mean is that Seiko, the one where it folds out and it's like a hinge almost that opens out.
Yeah.
To me, it makes, not only does it looks like it's a weak point on the bracelet. I'm sure it's not, but it looks ridiculous. It looks like there's a big thick bracelet, and then you've just got this little really thin piece of metal, and also it opens out to like one singular position. So unless you are actually wearing a wetsuit, it's like completely useless. Like it's not like you can let it out just a little notch if your wrist swells. You have to go like the full like 10 mil or whatever it is, like flopped out, and it just looks weird.
I think that's a hangover though from when actually those watches were designed as an actual diving tool, and you would wear it on a wrist or you would wear it over a wetsuit or whatever, and you needed that ability to effectively add one or two links to the length of it if you had a large cuff size on it. And frankly, probably when you were diving, you wouldn't give a toss how it looked.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just because I have people fight me in my comments all the time whenever I make reference to the fact that I don't like the divers comments. There's like suddenly everybody's like a saturation diver in the comments. And they're like, well, it's to go over a wetsuit. Okay. Like, what? So? I mean, like in most use cases, in almost all use cases, I would say a ratcheted clasp is
for 100%.
Much better. So, Colby, you had ratcheted clasp, didn't you, on your list?
Yes.
Rubber.
Well, but again, that's the only. It's pretty much only recently that you're beginning to see ratcheted clasps become relatively standard.
Yeah. For me, you have to have one of two things, and it's best if you have both. You either have to have on the fly toolless micro adjust, or you have to have quick release end links so that I can take the bracelet off. And I wouldn't buy a watch that didn't have a great bracelet, but I also, even if I love the bracelet, I like to be able to take it off, and I want it to be able to fit perfectly. So for me, that's something that should be as standard as a remote control with a television, right? Somebody could say, well, yeah, you could still use a television with no remote control, but nobody wants to. So that's how I think about it. And I wouldn't buy a watch unless it had either one of those two things.
We've just had a thanks, Colby. We just had a super chat. Thank you so much again, Memovox. Thank you for last week's super chat as well. Really appreciate it. Thank you for the very generous super chat.
Danish kroners. Well done.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I totally agree. I think a diver's extension is a must. Does anybody disagree with? I mean, some companies do it clumsy, where it's like a huge, like it's the whole back of the thing. Christopher Ward happens to be a good one, but
Yeah, I don't think it really. Since I'm not diving with it, I don't really care one way or the other whether
No,
it has
I mean-
one. And like you say, Seiko bracelets are notoriously bad. Well, these are dust magnets, but they're silicone straps. This is the one with the big Seiko. I love these. These are great, and I put a lot of these on my dive watches, and then it doesn't matter. You can choose
Although,
another adjustment.
Although Seiko and more so the Citizen with their rubber or kind of like rubberized straps, when they give you the dive extension and it's just another bit of rubber with another pin buckle on it that you can add to it to actually have effectively two straps lashed together, that always makes me laugh a little bit.
Yeah. Here's another quick one. This is my general ick at the watch industry. People that say "je le culture" instead of "Jaeger le culture." Where it's like somebody's got a stutter. Like, what's that watch? Je le culture. Like, no, Jaeger le
Just say
culture.
JLC. Just say JLC.
That's all I do.
Okay, Colby, I think this is one of yours. Silver dials. Where's this come from?
Oh, it comes from the fact that silver dials look awful. But so I wouldn't buy a silver dial to begin with. But what bugs me more than anything is a silver dial masquerading, and you know who you are, a silver dial masquerading as a white dial. So think like the Cartier tank, which in photos looks like a white dial. You look at it, it's more of a silver, I would say. Now, I don't count dials like the Tudor Black Bay GMT, which is opaline. It has a little hint of silver, but by and large, it's white. But if a dial looks white and is really silver, that really grinds my gears.
I disagree. I'll use the same. I'll use the same Seiko. I'll use an example. This is their Dawn Gray limited. Except I think I have it. Do I have it upside down? No, that's right. It's the way the camera looks. Anyhow, look at that. Look at that. You can see, the way the light plays on the dial, and it's got the black. Now, see, there's high contrast hands with the Luminova in the middle. I mean, I love a good silver dial.
Yeah. I know there was a period a few years ago when I was looking for white dial watches, and you'd see renders on websites, and it's going, that's a white dial. Then you'd see the watch in person, you go, that's a silver dial. I don't want a silver dial. I want a white dial. And it was remarkably hard to actually find a white dial that was a white dial, because a lot of them, when you see the images, people would even call them white dials, and you look at it and you go, nope, that's silver. So, I don't mind a silver dial, but I'd like it to be obvious that that's what it is when I see a picture of the watch before I make up my mind to go look at it. Don't tell me it's white and then make it silver.
That's a general ick in terms of, like, a lot of watch companies is they just can't seem to take a picture of or render a watch that looks anything like the finished product.
Because if you try and render silver, it's going to look like grey. That's the problem. So,
very hard to show metallics, because quite often they use opaline dials as well, and you've got that kind of pearlized or that kind of glitter effect through them as well, and it just never generally shows in pictures well.
Yeah, it's really.
I think for me, like silver, maybe it just looks unfinished to me. It looks like, oh, you just haven't finished that. You just need to paint it or something. I don't know. Maybe that's what my mind says.
Yeah. Dave, you didn't send it. You said you didn't have any deal breakers, but do you have anything that you don't know?
I've got. To be honest, I've never come across anything that's killed. If I generally like a watch, there's no perfect watches out there. There's always something about it that rubs you up the wrong way. But I've kind of learned that if you just say, "Oh no," if you refuse a watch for a tiny thing, I think you usually end up missing out because you can kind of get to enjoy something if you just are willing to give it a little bit of a go. I think for me, it's more styles of watches. That it's not that they put me off. I'm not attracted to certain styles of watches as a general rule. Dress watches don't do very much for me at all. I prefer tool watches as a general rule. Yeah, I don't get hung up on the little minutiae to the point where it would stop me buying a watch. If there was 4 or 5 things that I didn't like, the reason wouldn't be because of one thing. It would be more, I just don't like that watch. So no, I don't. I try. I used to get hung up by one thing. Oh, actually, is there one thing? I've never seen a watch that I like in any genre that's open heart.
Yeah, I think I think I may go with you on that. I'm not a fan of open heart watches.
Yeah,
I'm not going to go to the extent of saying there won't ever be something coming up, but for me, it's kind of like not even a halfway house. It's a partial way house to a skeletonized watch, but it's not a skeletonized watch, and they usually randomly cut a hole in the dial someplace that's completely irrelevant to anything of any meaning value. So I don't think I can ever say I've seen, and Seiko do it a lot, actually, quite a lot of their kind of dressier, presage type watches, and there's a few of the brands that do it.
Zenith does it.
Yeah. And I just kind of go, nah.
Yeah, Hamilton does a fair amount of those.
Yeah, Hamilton do a few as well. And weirdly, I think a lot of folk who maybe get into watches or things like that, they like it because for the same reason as a lot of folk like an open case back, because it kind of opens up and shows them what's happening. But yeah, I've never seen one that kind of takes me.
I think
wooden watches. Oh,
I think in Zenith,
I've got a wooden watch. I've got a wooden watch.
I do too.
Well, I don't like it. It's funny whenever somebody asks me at work who's not into watches, like, "Oh, my dad likes this watch" or something. It's either open heart or it's a wooden watch. It's like the two. Isn't it weird? Because I think open heart gives you that. Oh, I'm wearing a mechanical watch. I can see the inner workings of it. But like you said, Dave, you've got to spend a lot of money to get an open heart that actually shows a nice part of the movement. I think because like the cheaper ones where it's like. Because there's a skeletonized version of like a Miyota movements and other stuff, but you're basically just seeing mostly an unfinished plate on the watch, depending on where.
But I tell you, there must be enough folk do like them because Seiko bang them out year after year after year, so they wouldn't be doing that if folk don't like them. So I think probably a lot of folk who maybe are not hardcore into watches like the idea because you can see what's going on, So fair play. I guess it's a little bit analogous to kind of having that glass cover over the engine of a supercar or a sports car, isn't it? You can kind of see what's going on underneath. I still think it's tacky.
Well, I've always thought it was analogous to, they want you to think it's a fancy, like a tourbillon, basically.
Yeah.
For people who don't know anything.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the balance wheel spinning, they think, or making it look like a tourbillon.
I'd rather have open heart surgery than an open heart watch.
Yeah, that was quite good. Wasn't it? Yeah, I'd rather have open. And William, who's a big fan of the channel, William. Yeah, just if you like it,
it's like if you like it, you like it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, next up, this is one of mine, so I'm expecting nobody to agree with me. Short minute hands. I don't like on a tool watch, and this is the reason that I won't buy one of the higher end G-Shocks. I don't like it where the minute hand falls short of the minute track on the outside of the dial, where it just it looks like T-Rex arms. And there's loads of watches that do this. Christopher Ward is like amazing at having the hand go all the way to the almost the edge of the dial. That to me is beautiful.
But I mean, I mean, Jesus,
I haven't run into too many times though when I've seen that. Some vintage watches they did that.
A lot of
sometimes that's because they replaced the hands on it at some point in the past and they weren't right. But
yeah,
who does
Doxa
that now?
has a lot. Doxa typically has got a really short hour hand. Actually, the Pro Prof does as well as a general rule. But that's, I guess, if it's a technical dive watch, the only thing you're probably really more concerned about is the minute hand.
Yeah, this is it. This is
Yeah,
this
I see.
$8,000 G-Shock, and look at that.
What?
It's like nowhere near. It should be
Beautiful.
over the indice for my
If you're buying an
liking.
$8,000 G-Shock, I don't, you know.
Exactly.
If you're buying an $8,000 G-Shock,
Right.
you've got other problems compared
Yeah,
to
you
the
have
hand.
problems in your life that can't be
Hi,
helped.
welcome to the chat,
I
David.
Yes, I know. If I had $8,000, I would have. If this minute hand went all the way to the outer track, because there's a great
Oh,
story
no, he's
about.
gonna get it.
Oh, here we go.
Hey, if I had $8,000, I'd buy a Vision Drager Cruiser.
Oh, hang on, let's get this up.
Actually-
Oh my
See,
gosh.
beautiful.
Oh.
Yeah, with that hammered. Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
See,
Oh,
lovely
look at
little
that.
short hour hand for you there.
And actually hits the markers too, Dave. That's important for an $8,000 quartz watch.
Well, it corrects
Right?
itself as well.
Does it hit them? Does it?
Yeah, it does. It does actually. Yeah, it does hit them.
Yeah, and it will
I've had
correct
this for-
itself as well.
I've had this for a while now. Actually, do you know what? It's pretty bomb-proof. Mind you, it's a G-Shock. It should be pretty bomb-proof. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and that one's
that
probably
was
gone
one
up
of
in
my more
value.
insane.
I'm not going to
one of
fight
my more
zombies in my
insane-
$8,000 G-Shock. I'm going to strap on the square, baby, before I start
If
swinging
I'm-
that
if-
fat.
If I'm fighting zombies, I'm going out with every high-value piece of watch I can possibly have on my list. It's happening.
So they can't bite you; they're just biting watches. It's
Exactly. If they bite down on that, they'll break a few teeth. Don't you worry about it.
like a suit of armor. Okay. So that was my one. Let's get one of Colby. You had quite a few good ones. Poor AR coating.
Yeah, I think this is a really underrated feature of watches for me.
Mhm.
But it's especially puzzling when the dial is supposed to be the most notable feature of the watch. So the first experience I had with this was the Seiko SARX 029. That's their Urushi black lacquered dial.
Mm.
Beautiful dial, beautiful handset, beautiful watch. Does have Roman numerals, but really terrible AR coating. And so it was just really disappointed. It could have been so much more beautiful with just and what gets me is Seiko has one of the best AR coatings that I've ever seen. They call it their super clear coating, and they put it on like 10% of their watches, and it's incredible. So I don't understand watch companies that make dials that are really beautiful and then don't put great AR. I'll tell you one other example. I recently saw the Moser Venturer Vantablack dial, and it had terrible AR. And because the dial reflects no light, it means that the crystal, it becomes all that more important for the crystal to have great AR.
It becomes a mirror, doesn't it?
It is basically a mirror. And so it's
Yeah.
really, really hard to actually see and appreciate the dial. And when it costs $25,000, there's no excuse not to have at least as good as Seiko's super clear coating on there.
Yeah, I agree with this. A lot of the watches that I review on the channel, I do outside shots, and I don't normally, because I've even asked, I think on our group chat about, hey, is this AR coat? Is this what AR coating's supposed to do? Because my idea was that it actually stops reflection so you can see the thing. But I think the only true way of doing that, isn't it, to like oil fill a watch to like 100% get rid of any reflection?
That'll get a parallax. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So like an oil filled sin or whatever.
AR coating is, if you put it on the outside, it will scratch.
Right.
Fact.
You need it
Yeah, like a
underneath
bright
the crystal. And
You need it.
Yeah.
You need to either, ideally, I would only put it inside, and you need multiple layers. And actually, you'll be surprised how expensive a process good AR coating actually is, because usually the high end will put 5 to 7 layers, and the coating is considerably more expensive than the crystal itself.
Okay.
But
Yeah, so you just
can do
have to
different
share it.
colors as well. The outside, it will scratch at some point. It will scratch.
Yeah. So Robert Coleman had a good one here. Higher end quartz watches that the second hand misses its markers make me physically sick. So I've asked Veyer about this on their watches. Apparently, it's really hard to place that second hand on a quartz watch because of the way it's, it's like it's like ticking over. You have to get it like, and also I think as well on some of the watches that I've reviewed, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think it's also to do with the diameter of the dial, because sometimes you hit the markers, like the first sort of 20 seconds is hitting the marker, and then it just slightly goes off as it goes round. So I don't know if it's like the way
It can be a multiple of things as well. It depends how accurate you are with your pad printing on the dials as well, and
Right.
that can definitely impact it. You do weirdly get, it depends positional. You can get positional error because you get, typically as the second hand's falling, it drops fractionally more than it does when it's gone up the way, and from about the 9 up the way as well, it's driving against everything more than it is when it's dropping down. So actually it can miss them on opposite sides as well. It's a lot more difficult than you think to get it. But yeah, it is a bit frustrating.
Grand Seiko does a really
mastered
good
it though.
job with this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
they're
think
very
they have
good
a
at it.
dampening methodology. If you watch it in
Backlash.
slow-mo, that hand, there's so much torque, especially on the high-end quartz movements. You can see it, and the hand actually does this. And then it moves again like this, micro motions associated with each tick. But Seiko, I believe, Grand Seiko actually has a dampening thing to make it to
it
keep
uses an anti backlash on it. Yeah.
By the way, that's called the
It's-
Gibbs effect for you nerds out there. When you hit something and it rings, that's a Gibbs effect. Look it up.
Yeah, well, Walt Disney mastered this, didn't he, with the animatronic of Lincoln? Because before animatronics were like dead stilted, weren't they? And he mastered this, like the fluid, like the follow through, where it's sort of your hand floats, where it doesn't come to a complete stop. It kind of the momentum. He slows the momentum.
Right.
That's that he's very famous for doing, making animatronics look more human-like because they followed past and then came back. The arms. Okay, let's have a look. This is one of mine, and I'm going to point my finger firmly at Seiko mechanical watches, where they make a watch case so good, but then they put like a movement that's the equivalent of like the NH35A in, and they charge like $1,000, and then people are like, oh, the case finishing and all that's nice. It's like, it's like having, when I was growing up, my first ever car was a Morris Minor, and I loved the look of it, but it basically had like a lawnmower engine in it. It was like ridiculous, and I didn't have the money to do the conversion to a Ford engine or whatever. But yeah, mismatched cases versus the movement, where the movement is like an afterthought, and this is sort of entry level to mid range watches, I would say.
I get, the thing is, for me, that's a trade-off to get price point. It's as simple as that, isn't it? If you have an expensive case and an expensive movement, you have an expensive watch. If you've got an expensive movement and a so-so case, you've got a less expensive watch, and vice versa. And if you've got both things are cheap, you've got a cheap watch. And there's that tricky middle ground between probably 1,000 and 5,000 where something has to give. And 9 times out of 10, it will be the movement, because to the average Joe in the street, they don't really give a toss what the movement is. Does it tell the time? Is it relatively accurate? And does it do what it says in the tin? They're more concerned about what it looks like. So you'll more often see really nicely finished cases, dials, and a good looking watch with a relatively underpowered specification of movement in it. It's exactly the same as cars. Why do BMW make an M2 series looky-likey with a 1600cc non-turbocharged engine in it, but it looks like it's a touring car? Because people like how it looks. They don't really care what's under the hood so much.
Right.
Like when you get
along those lines too, I think when you make a shaped watch, but you don't have the shaped movement for it. I'm not talking to you, Patrick. Patrick, but
I think at the high end. If you're going to do a shaped case, particularly square and rectangular, do a shape. Ideally, do a shape movement. I think at the entry level, I can live with that, no problem.
Yeah, I can. Right.
But if you're also going to do something like put a round movement in a square case, do us all a favor and put a solid case back on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Somebody's asking me how old am I that I got a Morris Minor. I actually wanted a Morris Traveller until I read that you actually have to make friends with a carpenter if you own one, because getting replacement wood for the back is apparently quite hard. So I ended up with the Morris 1000.
And we should take you to task for swapping out an A series or an A plus engine for a Ford. What's wrong with having the gearbox in the
that
sun?
Z-Tech or whatever it was called. Was it Z-Tech Ford engine you could plonk straight into there and make
That's
it?
Lamborghini Miura owners about having the gearbox with the sump and dealing with that mess. But anyhow.
Yeah, well, I never did it. I just bought a Mini in the end. But
you can
Again,
just
same engine.
done what someone I've seen local to me has done is he's tried to do I don't know what they call them. What's the US kind of like SUV pickup, the old school one, the wood paneling on the backs?
there was a few, wasn't there?
Pickup
There's a
truck?
few of them. Or no, more kind of like a family
Station wagon.
SUV type, like
Like an
station
estate.
wagon type thing. The
station
ones with the
wagon.
wood on it and stuff.
Yeah,
Someone in
like the
UK's
Vista Cruiser they did in the 70s.
Yeah, these
the
guys.
oval
Someone in the
wheel.
UK has tried to do one up by using stick-on wooden laminate flooring on the side of one. It's just absolutely supreme.
It's
That
it's
PT
vacation.
Cruiser where you could get the
National
plastic
Lampoon's
wood, couldn't you?
Vacation. We need the family
it's-
truck.
Yeah, the
It's
family
exactly.
truckster.
It's so good.
Yeah.
A Grand Wagoneer. That sounds like a very American car from the
Oh yeah,
70s.
Wagoneer. Yeah.
Yeah, the
that
Wagoneer,
too,
the
you're
Jeep
right.
Wagoneer. They're bringing that back, I think, aren't they? The Simpsons always used to have the fake version, didn't they, called the Canyonero? or
That's
whatever.
Canyonero. That was an excellent episode.
That was awesome.
Okay, let's
That
have a
damn
look.
Wagoneer.
What else? I think we had Cyclops, screwdriver pushers. But I mean, Homage watches. I think Colby, you had this, and I think I had this on my list. I am not drawn to these at
Let's
all.
define Homage right now.
Yeah, I like
because we'll
Homage.
argue
Let's
over
Let's
this.
draw the
I'm talking
lines
about.
before we start this argument.
Let's
Are
get.
we talking
English-
about copies, or are we talking about
Copies.
something that's taken?
Yeah,
outright copies.
Fromages, not homages.
Right. Okay. So an outright just rip off, basically.
Yeah.
Agreed. I'd rather not buy watches.
Yeah, I saw a cracking one in not in Nordstrom Rack, which is for UK viewers is like TJ Maxx kind of thing. They had one. It was $600, and I'll have to post it in the community chat on the YouTube channel. But it was just a rip off Submariner for $600. I was like, wow, no wonder it's in, TK Maxx, TJ Maxx.
TJ Maxx.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually that's what it's called in England is TK Maxx, isn't it? And it's TJ
TK,
Maxx over in the
yeah.
US. Because we have
I like what David Detroit Mint does. So here is his.
that is
you
a
know,
homage. Yeah,
This is a homage. This is a nod to both the Seiko 6139 and 6138 chronographs, right?
yeah.
The case shape is very much 6139. He borrows a lot from that, and I think this is an excellent job because it doesn't pretend to be either one, but it takes the styling cues of both and gives it and pays. Homage means you're paying respects to
Yes.
a design. You can look at that in car design
nothing's
too. They'll
new.
pay homage to their past or to another mark of some sort. I think that's fine. I think that's good.
Yeah. So Memovox says the Submariner is a homage. I think this is a myth, actually, because if you think it's a homage of the Blancpain 50 Fathoms or you think it's a homage of the Zodiac, they actually all came out the same year. So
they're different.
they would have had to have tooled that very quickly. Although isn't there a story where they all went on a boat trip, like people from Blancpain, people from Rolex? But yeah, they neither of them had time to copy each other.
Although weirdly, what is it Picasso said? What is it? Good artists copy, great artists steal.
Yeah, probably.
And he was pretty good at what he did.
That was the whole Apple and Windows thing, wasn't it? That they actually both stole the GUI off Xerox. Awesome. Okay. So I think we've got through most of these. Let's see if chat has got any that have come through. I think we did have.
I do have one more, Sam, if we have time.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
One of the ones I had on my list is rotor wobble.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
7750. Can I hear you? Yes.
So I
Neo
first
to 8
Sorry, I
noticed
can't hear you, Todd. I've got a 7750 on. What? Yep.
It's wobbling.
I first noticed this with the Sal Baltimore, their Bolt Pilot Recon, which is this 40 millimeter titanium watch. And they use the Miyota movements in them, which are unidirectionally winding. And with a watch that light, the rotor wobble was out of control. Yeah. I would scratch my head and I would be hearing that for the next minute. And I had that for 2 days and then I sold it on eBay. I think I don't mind unidirectional rotors, but I think they need to be in watches, like watch cases that minimize their effect.
Yeah.
But I don't know that you can engineer a watch case to get rid of that rotor wobble.
I don't know. Can you?
By wobble, are you talking about lateral wobble? Or are you talking about actual just straight up winding noise?
Straight up winding, I think.
Yeah, well,
It's the
sometimes
non-winding part that's the problem. It spins really fast because
The backspin. Well, unfortunately, Colby, you're probably going to be in for a general world of hurt in the future because almost all of them are moving now to ceramic bearings because they are infinitely more efficient. But my God, they're noisy.
And noisy, yeah.
really,
And they're all doing it. We do it. We all do it because it is massively more efficient from a winding perspective. A lot less lubrication, lot longer term service. But oh boy, they're loud.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
like I have
You should probably get used to it.
the Christopher Ward, the SH21 that I have is a unidirectional winding movement.
No, it's bidirectional.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, I was mistaken.
Sorry.
Maybe that's why it was so quiet.
Yeah, it's
Thanks,
I get
JJ.
you. Like there are some that are noisy for sure, but yeah, you'll find as a general rule more and more, especially modern new movements, are even noisier.
Not
because
everyone
they
can
start
have the
doing-
Seiko Magic lever system, which is so ingenious and so simple
Yeah.
that it is an amazing design that allows bidirectional winding.
Yep.
We had so I don't know if Robert, if you are asking a genuine, does Pagani designs get away with it? No, they're like the worst offender. Even Steinhardt, I would say, is
Oh, yes. How do they get away with it? Because actually, it's almost impossible
Yeah.
to patent a design of a watch.
yeah. Yeah, because Rolex,
Although-
when they've sued people, it's either for fakes, isn't it, or if they've modified a Rolex? Because didn't they sue that company that was painting the dials aftermarket? They were buying.
Yeah.
If
diamond.
typically how they've been successful, because they've not always been successful, is if you've got a business that takes a genuine Rolex product and modifies it, and in a lot of cases it would be they would modify the dial. If they were to remove any Rolex iconography logos and reapply them to something that had been modified, they got them on that basis because that was pass off or that was fraudulent use of parts. How most of them get away with it now is if they take the dial off, they just don't reuse the Rolex logos, and you can do that all day long. It does piss them off quite a lot, but you can do that.
So
And you
does
also
Universal
can't sell it
Genève-
as a Rolex watch.
Okay, so Universal Genève, they must have some kind of relationship with them because they
No. It's you've got to be very, very careful about what you do. If you take a dial, for example, and you leave the logos and everything on it, and you cut holes in it, that's fine because you've just removed material. But if a lot of the cases they would produce a new movement, but then reapply the logos back onto that different dial, which wasn't the original Rolex dial.
Yeah. Here's a interesting one. Any Omega watch that has 007 on the dial is a big turn off.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah, because the watch is there. Because if you want a watch that was actually in the film, they never had 007 on the dial, did they? Like the Quartz Brosnan Seamaster or the
I get all the white Seikos that more wore.
And the newer ones, they're the latest one. They've done away with that for that very reason. It's basically the same watch as in the film.
Yeah,
they've got it on the case back a little bit.
Yeah, although one of my favorite Aquaterras ever is that James Bond edition where it's got the little shield on the second hand and stuff. Just incredible watch.
And because the other one is related to that, I guess it gets me a bit. I probably wouldn't buy a watch that is a heavily collaborative watch for something a bit weird, like a sailing regatta or the America's Cup or things like that. I tend to not be particularly. I wouldn't. If it's subtle and it's on the case back and the rest of the watch I really like, I would maybe live with it, but it's more likely to put me off because usually they're a bit heavy-handed with them. Less is more and things like that for me.
Where were you with the new X33, the America's Cup X33? No?
I would just buy an X33. If that was the only X33 and I liked that watch, I'd think about it. But the fact that there's other non-branded options is kind of like quite happy for me. But they've got most brands have got more subtle with it. It tends to now be hidden on the case back or something, so that from the front it just looks like a regular watch. But yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of overly branded collabs. But then weirdly, probably enough, like all the rare Rolexes that pop up, like the Domino's Pizza ones and stuff, are the ones that folk will literally cut their hands off for. So it just shows you I don't know anything.
Yeah, good point. Dave Rimas is saying Artisans de Genève not Universal
Not
Genève.
Universal Genève, correct.
No, they're not. No, Artisans de Genève take mainly Rolexes, but they do other watches, don't they? They're like a Bamford, like a where they re-engineer Rolexes and heavily customize them. They did that one with Spike Lee, the Cool Hand Brooklyn, I think it was called, with where they did a date just. They did a skeletonized GMT that still had the date, with a transparent date disc that looked incredible. Yeah, really incredible. Watch. You should follow them on Instagram. Some of their, I mean, they're a bit cheeky. They don't show a lot of the watch. But
someone's actually got a good one. I don't like watches from movies in general.
Ooh.
If someone's taken a watch someone takes a watch that uses it in a movie that's a regular watch, that's absolutely fine, because it's just a watch, isn't it?
Yeah.
If they design a watch for a movie specifically, and then decide to do a retail variant of it that is a ham-fisted attempt at what they did, like for example with Hamilton and the watch from Tenet.
Yeah,
that was
disappointing.
disappointing.
I was about to say that.
Because
Murph was done
they should just have left that alone, because they were never going to be able to produce it, because what it did wasn't actually.
Tenet was
really
done
realistic.
wrong, but the Murph was done.
Murph was done
well.
amazingly well. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's just show
well.
that. Yeah, sorry, I was going to just
quickly
show the Tenet watch. So this is what Hamilton did, didn't they? This was their Tenet watch, but the actual one from the film is this one, which if you've seen
these
the
two
film,
digital
that
counters
would
in
have
it.
been so cool.
Yeah, and if you've
And
seen
actually,
the film,
weirdly,
it's so
they could have done that. They could
Yeah.
actually have done that.
They could have done this.
Yeah, and it would have been so much better. But yeah, that was a bit of a weak, lily-livered kind of like put
That was
out.
a cost
But then
savings.
Yeah,
committee.
exactly.
Yeah, because it's so important to the film why why those two ones are different and why there's a digital display there. It's like a key plot device for the film. So for them to not do it was like you said.
Then to be fair, Hamilton have done many that are actually really cool and have done the job. As have like Seiko with the watches from Aliens and things like that. They've become pretty much cult classics.
Yeah, those were made for the movie and produced.
And the re-editions were pretty faithful to the ones that were out. So I think that was fair enough.
That was fair enough. Yeah, this is not like Hamilton, by the way. If you need help, call me and I will make sure you do it right. I'll help you.
I like movie watches. I like researching it because there's like that IMDb, isn't there? But there's a watches one where you can go on and see. I mean, all of the original Mission Impossibles where he was using G-Shocks. Like, I mean, there was one custom one in the second one, the John Woo directed one. But other than that, they were just off the shelf G-Shock. So if you like the films, you could easily pick up a G-Shock.
Yeah, if you like Wick, you can get Bucherers. The
little less foot.
The Bucher.
And like as someone said, I think Hamilton, the Dune watches from Hamilton, we talked about them a few weeks ago. They're actually really cool.
Yeah,
they've got nearer to what they should be.
Yeah, I've seen the 2001 Space Odyssey watches come out, and they're very expensive. I'd love to have one just to kind of have that piece of history, but not for the prices they're fetching.
Here's a good one off William. So I have some watches I find difficult to pull the crown out and set the date, and I find it hard to get on the first try. This is it's sometimes a deal breaker for me, the size of the crown, or if the crown's too recessed. Also, sometimes on Solita movements, you can pull the crown out, but it doesn't quite stop the second hand all the way out. You have to like ink it out a little notch. I don't know, but the crown.
My Citizen Chronomaster is supposed to be accurate to 5 seconds a year, but if you're changing time zones, like daylight savings time, you can just do that by pulling the crown out to the first position, except that the first position and the second position are 1 gram and 1 millimeter apart. So if you very, very easily pull it out to the second position, hack the watch and bugger the accuracy. So, having properly indented crown positions, and I can see that. That's but you only learn that after you've bought the watch. So,
that's a good point. What about ghost positions? What do you feel about that when a manufacturer uses a
Lazy.
date
Lazy.
movement and doesn't put the
Lazy.
date on there?
not a deal breaker, but I know they're lazy, as Dave said.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
lazy.
because I just did a Paulin watch. Thanks to Lucy from Watchbox Diaries for sending me a couple of Paulins in for review. They did the NH35A, but they went to the effort of removing the ghost position of the date.
Good for them.
Yeah, that's
Although
good.
I have to say it is lazy, but it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. Everyone thinks it's easy, but you do have to effectively redesign a component and manufacture that component and then replace that component in every movement. So frankly, a lot of low-cost watches that they want to do it without a date, it would actually materially add to the price of that watch if they were to kind of engineer out the ghost position, because a lot of the movement manufacturers themselves do not offer the movement without a ghost position. So it depends what they're doing. I get it at certain price watches.
Yeah. So Treble says, I'm on a roll now. I do like big crowns, cathedral
I don't
hands.
like
or
big
Sounds like a
whatever.
song. I like
Yeah,
big
it does.
crowns and I
Crowns
cannot
and I can't
lie. Oh,
I just realised, Treble, you used to be a channel member. Now you're not a channel member. What's going on? It's what, $1 too much a month?
Good grief.
Actually, I nearly did a joke earlier, but I'll stay non-political. It was like I noticed a guy who was earlier on donated his Danish krona. He's done that two weeks in a row. I think he's just sending the money over so that when the Joy of America takes over Greenland, they've got local currency when they arrive.
Yes. Oh God. Yeah, he got laughed out there, didn't he? Trump Jr. got laughed out of the place. Awesome.
I like the one that was Kronos or chronograph craze, and he's clearly having a dig at Seiko. Chronographs that have a 24-hour hand that's got bugger all to do with actually
I
being
hate
a
that.
chronograph.
Yeah.
hate
That's a good
Or
one.
30-minute counters on them.
Yes. Yeah, this is a thing that TJ, who was actually a naval aviator, hates about chronographs, the 30-minute, and then the 24-hour that Seiko put on there, and then they omit that there's no actual running seconds. I hate that, where it's like the bicompacts and there's no running seconds, so the watch is completely still unless you're running the chronograph. Wow, we could probably go for another hour, but we're right at time here. So thank you so much for so active in the comments section. Please upvote the video if you want to become a channel member. Link in the description down below. Big thanks to the panel for joining us, and we'll see you next week on Casual Watch Talk. Thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye.